Room 203 is one of the most infamous rooms in all of the world. It's a room that no one should ever enter. But why? Why is it so dangerous? What makes it the most evil room in the world? You're about to find out. It was 1936 when the first guests started checking in. The grand opening of the hotel had been widely publicized, and people from all over the country came to check it out. It was the talk of the town. Everyone wanted to stay in room 203, but no one knew why. All they knew was that there was a rumor going around that if you stayed in room 203, your wish would come true. Some say it was just a clever marketing tactic by the new hotel to get people to stay there. But how did they know that once they stepped foot into room 203, they wouldn't be able to leave? One of the first guests to check in was a young woman named Mary. She was traveling alone and had heard about the strange occurrences in room 203. Despite this, she decided to stay there anyway. She was hoping that her wish would come true and she could finally go home. But when she got to her room, she found that it wasn't what she expected. The room was filthy and smelled like mildew. The walls were covered in scribblings, and the bed was made of what looked to be human skin. She tried to call for help, but the phone was disconnected. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a figure emerged from the darkness. It was tall and thin with long, sharp claws. It lunged at Mary and she screamed. That's when she realized that her wish had come true. She was now trapped in room 203 forever. The hotel staff found Mary's body the next morning. They were shocked to see that she had been torn apart, limb from limb. But this was only the beginning. Over the next few years, several other guests met the same fate. They entered room 203 with hopes of having their wishes granted, but they never came out. One guest was a famous actor named John. He was hoping to use room 203 to get more fame and fortune. But as soon as he stepped into the room, he was attacked by an invisible force, and his bones were broken one by one until he died. Another guest was a wealthy businessman named Robert. He was hoping to use room 203 to make even more money. But as soon as he stepped into the room, he was met with a vision of his own gruesome death. He tried to run, but it was too late. The vision became reality, and Robert was killed in the same way he had seen. As the years went on, more and more people tried to enter room 203, but no one was successful. The hotel staff eventually gave up on finding out what was in the room or who was behind the attacks, because they were afraid of what might happen to them. They simply sealed off room 203 and put up a warning sign. But the legend of room 203 continued. People from all over the world came to see the sign, and some even tried to break into the room. But no one knew what was inside until one day when the hotel was being demolished. A group of workers were tearing down the walls of room 203 when they heard a blood-curdling scream. They stopped what they were doing and listened. Then they heard it again. It was coming from inside the wall. They didn't know what to do, but eventually they decided to investigate. They broke through the wall and found a secret passageway. They followed the passageway and it led them to a basement. In the basement, they found a dark and dirty mattress, and when they lifted it up, they saw a skeleton. The workers were horrified, but they knew that they had finally solved the mystery of room 203. They took the skeleton to a local museum. It's still displayed today. To this day, no one knows what happened in room 203 or why the room was so evil. But the story of room 2Z continues to live on in the minds of those who hear about it. Now watch. Most evil places in America, or check out evil things that lurk in the shadows.
Emily had always wanted her own place, so when she found an old house for sale at an unbelievably low price in a quiet suburban town, she thought it was a dream come true. The realtor simply said, the last owner left in a hurry, but Emily didn't ask questions. She signed the contract that same afternoon. Her first night there, a storm swept through the town. Heavy rain pounded the roof while the wind howled like a wounded animal. The wooden floors creaked with every gust. and the entire house seemed to groan as if it had a life of its own. Emily, busy unpacking, wandered through the house with a small flashlight. That's when she noticed a locked door in the hallway leading to the basement. On the door was a yellowed, torn piece of paper. The letters were messy, almost carved into the page. "Do not open. It will wake up." She laughed nervously. "Probably a prank from the last owner," she whispered. Still, the words lingered in her mind long after she returned to her boxes. The first night around midnight, Emily sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, trying to ignore the storm. Then she heard it. Knock, knock. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. The sound came from below her feet, directly from the basement. She tried to ignore it, but the knocking grew louder. Knock, knock, swallowing hard. Emily tiptoed toward the basement door. She crouched down and pressed her ear against the wood. There it was again. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, like someone or something was knocking from the other side. She grabbed her flashlight and shone it through the gap under the door. Her breath caught in her throat. For a split second, she saw a small, pale hand pressing against the other side of the door. And then it was gone. Emily stumbled backward, trembling. "It's just my imagination," she whispered to herself, locking the door. The second night, the next night, the storm had passed, but the knocking returned, this time louder, more urgent. Bang, bang. Emily's curiosity outweighed her fear. She couldn't take the suspense anymore. She searched the house and found an old, rusty key hidden under a kitchen drawer. With shaking hands, she unlocked the basement door. The hinges creaked like a scream as the door swung open. A gust of icy air rushed out, extinguishing her confidence. The basement was pitch black. The beam of her flashlight barely pierced the darkness, as if the shadows themselves were swallowing the light. The basement. Step by step, she descended the narrow wooden stairs, each creak of the floorboards echoing too loudly. The air was heavy, damp, and smelled of mildew and rust. At the far corner of the basement, something caught her eye. A large wooden box, almost like a coffin, was sitting against the wall, wrapped tightly with rusty wire. Carved into its surface were strange symbols she didn't recognize, like old runes or warnings. As Emily approached, a loud, frantic pounding erupted from inside the box. Bang, 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 she gasped, nearly dropping her flashlight. Then, a voice soft, childlike, came from within. "Please, let me out." Her blood ran cold. The child's voice was someone trapped inside. She hesitated, torn between fear and instinct. She reached for the wire, the awakening just as she touched the box. Her flashlight flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed her. Then she felt it, a small, icy hand grabbing her wrist. Emily screamed and stumbled back. When the flashlight came back to life, her breath froze. The box was open. Crawling out was not a child, but something that used to look like one. Its skin was pale and waxy, stitched in places like an old broken doll. Its eyes were blank, milky white. The thing tilted its head and whispered, "They locked me here, and now you'll stay with me." The final moments, Emily bolted up the stairs, pounding on the basement door. It slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. She screamed for help, but no one heard. Behind her, the creature crawled closer, its nails scraping the wooden steps. Multiple voices, deep guttural and inhuman, whispered all at once, "Stay." With a cold, bony hand grabbed her ankle, pulling her back into the darkness. Her screams echoed through the house, and then silence. The next day, the following morning, the house stood quiet and still. A For SAE cheap price sign hung crookedly in the front yard. If anyone dared to look into the basement window, they would see a pair of white, lifeless eyes staring out. Emily's eyes. Would you dare open the basement door?